everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today on an episode of Retail Redeveloped. I am so excited to be joined today by the CEO of CBL Properties, one of the largest and longest running mall owner-operators in the entire United States. I am joined by Stephen Lebovitz, and we are going to sit down and talk about all sorts of stuff today. We're going to talk about how he got started in the business, the mall, current climate, what they're doing in the face of a rapidly changing retail environment. We're going to cover a lot of stuff today. Stephen, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to join me today.
Thank you, Adam. My pleasure.
So, Stephen, before we get into all of the fun buzzword, retail things that are flying around the headlines today, would you just take a quick minute and talk to us about, how did you become sitting in your chair that you occupy today? Take us through kind of the business, how you got started in the business, and kind of the why behind the CBL business.
Sure. So I'll just give you a quick history. I'm actually third generation Lebovitz in the shopping center business. My grandfather, whose first name was Moses Lebovitz, started in the early 1960s. He took a former drive-in theater, tore it down, and built Chattanooga, Tennessee's first shopping center, and Chattanooga is where we're based. And my father, Charles, who still works with CBL, who's chairman of our board, worked with him. And they were really pioneers in the shopping center business in the 1960s and the 1970s. And in 1978, CBL and Associates, which was a private company, was formed with my dad as president, CEO, and chairman, and really participated in the whole wave of new developments of shopping centers. And I joined the company in 1988 after graduating from business school, started out in development, and then was part of a lot of the acquisitions that we did in the late 90s and the early 2000s. We went public in 1993, and after we were public, it gave us the currency to grow. So we went from being a company that had about 15 malls and about 20 strip shopping centers, and grew at the peak to a company of over 150 properties with 80 enclosed malls. So it's been a great story, and I'm excited to talk about how the business has changed and transformed and is continuing to do so now.
Well, let's start there. That's an amazing talk about going from a drive-through theater to a kind of a national retail powerhouse. I love stories like that. But let's talk about how the malls have changed. Just since I grew up, there was a mall that was developed, I believe, by Faison called Eastland Mall. That was one of the dominant shopping centers in Charlotte when I was growing up, and I remember that as almost a community gathering place as much as I remember going there and buying stuff. Talk a little bit about, they had a arcade that I used to love, and they had a ice skating rink that I used to love, and talk a little bit about how the dynamic of what a mall means and what a mall is, and how that's changed from, call it, 1960, 1980 to 2020.
Sure. Well, I'll say our strategy has always been to whether develop or acquire malls in middle markets. So we haven't owned malls in Dallas or New York or Philadelphia or Miami. We've focused on markets like Chattanooga or Huntsville or Greensboro or Winston-Salem or Madison, Wisconsin. So markets that our property can be the dominant mall. And there's other retail, and over the years, there's been even more retail added, but the mall has a franchise position, and it plays an important part in the community, and that role has changed, but the mall, in most of our malls, have always had a real presence in their community. We've been one of the largest taxpayers, one of the largest employers, and we're a place to hang out, a place where charities have partnership events, a place where families come and take pictures with the Easter Bunny or with Santa Claus, and they bring their kids or they bring their pets. So that community focus actually is something that hasn't changed. The days of teenagers coming to the mall and hanging out on Friday nights or weekends, that's changed with social media and the way just general behavior has changed. But the mall, has played a big part in the community, and that's been a big part of our strategy. I'd say that the role of the mall, though, has definitely changed kind of in the overall retail landscape. And when a lot of the malls were first built, they were very similar. There was a lot of say cookie cutter approach with department stores, a road that went around the property, the enclosed mall between, a lot of the same stores. And a big focus for us over the last few years has been making the malls more focused on their local demand, on their local demographics, on the market, on adding regional users, adding different kind of players, and not having as uniform approach as typically the business had.
So how do you kind of remake, because I would agree with you. I mean, I used to travel a lot doing my kind of retail business, and the malls did get formulaic. I mean, if you'd seen one, you'd seen a half a dozen with the Ring Road and the, Spencer's or whatever those 25 stores were in every middle market mall. How did you, and how are you prioritizing where to spend your dollars and your mental bandwidth? I mean, obviously you guys have, some 120 properties roughly. How do you figure out which ones you have to focus on, and where do you decide where to start and the best place to start?
Well, we try to look at it from a strategic point of view. And one of the opportunities we've had over the last 5 years has been to recapture department stores that are struggling or failing. And Sears was at one time an anchor in virtually all of our malls. We had over 50. Now we're down to less than 10. And Bon-Ton, which is a company from the Midwest, went Chapter 11 and liquidated in 2017, and we had 14 of those. So those box department store vacancies really created an opportunity for us to bring in larger users that we didn't have space for, didn't have room for before. And with Sears, we started with what at the time were our two most productive properties, Cool Springs Galleria in Nashville and Fayette Mall in Lexington, Kentucky. Both were high sales per square foot. And we actually bought the stores from Sears and redeveloped them, brought in restaurants, brought in entertainment, brought in some value retail, brought in service. Stores like Ulta Beauty, American Girl, King's Entertainment, H&M, Cheesecake Factory. Those were just some of the names that we did. So we took what were the most productive malls and went from there. You're familiar with Friendly Center in Greensboro. Whole Foods actually took part of the Sears building there, and we did our part to facilitate that because that was definitely a more productive use. And so we've looked across the portfolio and looked at where we can have the most impact on the property through these redevelopments. And we've been able to unlock a lot of value in parking lots that were overparked and underutilized. And we're adding hotels and medical and office and other non-retail as part of that, in addition to the restaurants that I mentioned earlier. And every project is different. It depends on the local market. It depends on what the configuration of the mall, the amount of parking, and what the demand is. So, it's really turned into a huge program for us. There's definitely some short-term pain when the department stores close, but once we're able to reopen the redevelopments, it really sets the property on a path for a strong future.
Yeah, you guys have so much land just because of the nature of the way malls are laid out. It's almost like a sleeping giant effect when you're able to re-energize massive swaths and you have, obviously there's a lot of money involved to do that, but the ability to kind of amenitize on a grand scale where people are already used to going and spending money, the infrastructure, the road systems, the ingress egress is already there. That does seem like a pretty incredible opportunity that you guys are almost solely able to, or you guys, other mall owners, I should say, are solely able to capture.
No, we have one project. It was a former Sears in Milwaukee at Brookfield Square, and it was roughly 30 acres of land, one of the busiest corners in the market. And we just reopened opened a redevelopment that has a dine-in movie theater, has an entertainment user, 2 restaurants. We've got a medical office, outpatient orthopedic building that's getting built, and the city actually purchased the former auto center, which is about 70 acres, and they're building a convention center and a hotel. So, that former Sears, the total traffic, the total sales volume, the total productivity is going to be 4 or 5, even more times from what was there before. And it's going to just totally transform that property.
So you mentioned that you guys really concentrated on the middle markets, and it's very obvious when you look at the map of your properties. Do you think that made you guys more susceptible to this rapid changing kind of dynamic, or do you think it actually sheltered you guys from the rapid change?
I'd say in a lot of markets, it's a little of both. It depends on the market. In some markets, the mall had a dominant presence. It had critical mass, or it has critical mass. It's got the right type of growth around it. And so it's well positioned for the future. And in those kind of opportunities, when a new type of user wants to come to the market, they want to be on our real estate. But in some cases where there's smaller markets, when you add up the total retail and you add in some of the new dynamics such as online shopping, then the market share gets chopped up into a lot of pieces, and those are the ones that have been tougher to deal with.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So let's talk about kind of current issues that every mall, every retailer is facing. I talked to a lot of very, very smart retailers, both on the landlord side and on the tenant side. And everybody wants to talk about Amazon, the Amazon effect, the retail apocalypse, all the kind of the clickbait stuff that you hear. What percentage of this changing landscape do you put on Amazon or direct to consumer DTC brands? How much do you look at the current bankruptcies and the current kind of string of retailers, singing the blues, going out of business, all of that? How much is because of Amazon and this change to direct to consumer kind of model, and how much do you think is just retailers that didn't continue to change and adapt, and maybe didn't control cost, maybe took on bad debt, maybe tried to expand too quickly? What percentage do you assign to those two sides of the ledger?
It's hard to assign a percent. No question, Amazon and online has been a big factor, and online sales is 10 to 12%, depending on how you calculate it. And it's grown, but it's grown 30, 40% a year. And it's definitely changed the way people shop. So that's, I can't give you a percentage, but that alone, has really not been anywhere close to the full factor, because the retailers today that are evolving and that are going to be successful have added digital to their strategies as well. So, and what everyone has discovered is this halo effect where online shopping is facilitated by physical stores, and physical stores are facilitated by an online presence. And when the two come together, you get the best result. And that's why Amazon is out there trying to open a lot of stores, and why the hottest retailer in the country is Walmart, because they've got so much infrastructure built into their store base that they can really deliver for the customer what they want and when they want it. And at the end of the day, it's always been about the customer, and that's, you look at the history of retail, whether it's the origin of the malls getting built in the suburbs, it was because that's where the population migrated. And then over time, I'd say the increase of value shopping has been driven by a lot of the price sensitivity that's become more important from a retailer point of view. And a lot of the bankruptcies that we've seen have been, I'd say, either self-induced or balance sheet induced by too much debt. And so, retailers that didn't really have a strategy, didn't have the capital to invest, and you almost feel like it was a matter of time.
Right.
It was just accelerated by Amazon or some of the other online shopping that's out there.
And as a sticks and bricks kind of brick and mortar retail guy, I'm speaking for myself here, it's fascinating to look at the DNA of these direct-to-consumer brands and how they have so much data on their consumers. They know that if they go into this zip code in this market, whether it be in Milwaukee or Charlotte or New York City, that there is already a hotbed of their consumers there because of geo-targeting and just all the data that they are just naturally trained to acquire. It makes it really fascinating to think about how they'll be able to laser accurate open stores in the future, because they're giving themselves a leg up because they already know their customers there.
Yeah, we just opened in the past week 2 digital native brands that are now starting to open stores. One of them, it was their first store. It's a 6-week temporary over the holidays, Liverpool jeans, and they picked the markets. It's our property, Oak Park in Kansas City, and they knew their customer. They knew where their customer was. They knew where there was a good opportunity, and that was the first store that they opened, and they've hit it out of the park. And then we opened another store called Adore Me, and this is, I think, their 5th store, and their 6th store, and it's intimate wear, for women, and it's a very inclusive strategy, and very much on trend with where that business has evolved. And they just opened here in Chattanooga. Again, they know their customer. They've got such an advantage. They know they have a built-in customer base before they open the store, and so that's really going to continue to grow. And we're developing through our technology the ability to share information with retailers too. And we're talking about traffic trends and what we can do to help them, what they can do to help us to drive traffic, to make the shopping experience more productive and more meaningful for the shoppers.
So let's talk about that a little bit deeper, because obviously you guys have no choice but to change, because you're in an industry that is changing literally while we're on the phone together. The industry's changing. How do you continue to adapt to this direct-to-consumer model and this online native model? And how do you take your sticks and bricks approach and meld it with that. Do you see a time where you could simplify logistics and have, a few different storefronts that are all sharing a back of house, and you're taking that Walmart model of, we already have this incredible logistics footprint, and we can be a lot of things to a lot of people. We can bring in a lot of pop-up digitally native brands, make it brainless for them to get up and operating and grow with them. Is that something that you guys are talking a lot about, or is that still, in the distance on the horizon?
I think it's a little early for that, and it needs to evolve. There's a lot of trends out there, but then actually being able to make them work from a financial point of view is always more challenging. But our strategy is really diverse in terms of the different tactics we're taking. And when I'm sitting in my office here in Chattanooga, I'm looking. We're right outside of Hamilton Place, which is one of our flagship malls, and I look at a cheesecake factory that we opened last year that was in a former Sears parking lot. So, having that experience, something you can't do online, and food delivery is growing, but people still like the social experience of eating out, of going out, fresh food, all that. So giving the customer those kind of experiences is definitely a big part of the strategy, whether we're adding entertainment, Dave & Buster's or Whirly Ball or stores like that have opened in properties and continue to open in properties that, have a really fun element to them, and that's getting more and more popular. So you've got that aspect of it. Then you have the technology of it, the technology aspect where legacy retailers are innovating. Some doing a better job than others. You look at a store like Macy's, who uses their department stores to fulfill online orders. JCPenney that is pushing a lot of their online, buy online, pick up in the store is a big part of their strategy. So there's really a lot of innovation, a lot of new thinking, and a lot of piloting out there that different companies are doing, us included.
So I've heard it said that 70% of your new leases are not apparel, which to think of that 10 or 12 years ago would sound crazy that you guys aren't kind of leading the charge in apparel. Why do you think that's changed so quickly? And is that something that you guys continue, or that you see continuing and becoming less and less of a piece of your strategy? Or is this just kind of a weird correction in the market where these department stores are shrinking, so obviously apparel is a huge part of that? I mean, walk me through that strategy and kind of the underlying cause and effect.
Yeah, no, it's a little of both. The apparel is still a big percentage of our shopping centers, but we're intentionally reducing it. There's overcapacity in juniors, in children's, in women's apparel. Some of the legacy retailers in our portfolio just aren't as successful as they were in the past, but they've been replaced by companies that are doing really well and have a great presentation. We've done a lot of business with Altered State, a private company out of Knoxville, and they've got one of the most dynamic, engaging stores. They sell apparel, accessories, gifts. They're really, their stores look great. Their service is really strong. They have a give back component where they give back a percentage of their sales to manufacturers or the community. So you've got all these elements to them, and that's the kind of retailer that's emerging. And then just the way demographics have transitioned, there's a lot of demand for services, there's demand for fitness, there's demand for medical. So we're adding all those uses as part of the tenant mix, and that we feel like that gives us a more sustainable platform long term.
Yeah, I would love to pick your brain on, obviously you have 120 properties and you have a big enough job just trying to figure out how to optimize those properties. But I think it would be a fascinating thing to look at a merchandising plan from, 1998. And then if you were able to develop one from scratch today, I don't even know if it would be the same species.
No, it would look really different. I mean, there wasn't that many years ago where the department stores wouldn't even let you put a restaurant in, and, putting food courts in was a big battle. So, just food being, 10% or more, in a lot of the centers, new centers, food's 20, 30%. And, that was taboo back in the, early years of the business. So
it hasn't even been that long.
A lot.
I started really as kind of a restaurant expert in the commercial real estate space. And I always felt like that we were kind of the redheaded stepchild in the room because our deals are more expensive. We kill your parking. Our infrastructure is a total nightmare. It was like, oh, we got to talk to the restaurant guy. And now all of a sudden we're the prettiest girl at the dance.
Yeah, well, that's true. And even some so we're doing 2 casinos in former department stores, and they're part gaming, they have entertainment, they have sports bars, and they're both in Pennsylvania. And if you would have asked me 5 years ago about doing a casino attached to the mall, I would have looked at you like you had 3 eyes. But now we're excited, and everyone's excited. We had a groundbreaking for one last week, and it's a $150 million investment in that facility. And so it's going to be huge in terms of job creation and traffic, and the excitement factor is awesome for that. But that's something completely out of the box from where we were even a few years ago.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The experience, it's all experiential, and obviously everybody knows the phrase that food and experiences still aren't fun and still don't taste good on Amazon. When they figure out how to get that, we're all going to be in big trouble. I would love to hear your take. I mean, there's a phrase that I hate that I've heard and read 1,000 times that you have to call the retail apocalypse. I'd love to hear your take on just that kind of clickbait, phrase, and also just get your opinion. Do you think there's any credibility to the notion that the United States is overstored? Like we just have too many stores, and I'd love to hear your opinion on both of those things.
Yeah, so I mean, look, there's, like you say, there's a lot of clickbait, there's a lot of sensationalism. Everyone is trying to create the best headline. Retail apocalypse, definitely got traction with the media, and I really think that it's all about the quality of the location, the quality of the market, and the quality of the real estate. And like you said, if you would have drawn up the template for a mall 20 years ago, it would be very different than it is today. But we have the opportunity to transform really high quality real estate and properties into exactly what the customer is looking for in the future. And there are a number of malls that the best strategy is over time to demall them and open them up. And we've sold properties that we didn't want to go through the process of the redevelopment that have been completely transformed into mixed use, office, multifamily, entertainment, restaurants, and they're not malls. So, but they were great locations, and they're going to thrive for a long time going forward. So I think that there's just every product has a life cycle. The traditional enclosed mall, which a lot of them were built in the 60s and 70s, had a great wave of growth. But now it's got to change. It's got to transform. That doesn't mean that it's not going to be enclosed and it's not going to have retail, but it has to have all these other elements to be successful long term.
So if you had to, you've already been extremely gracious with your time, Stephen, and I appreciate it. I love hearing, people that have been in the business and just explain how it's changed and what gets them excited about the future. If you had to pick one catchphrase or one parting shot to tell people about what has you excited about, retail in general or you guys as properties moving forward, what keeps you in the business? What keeps you excited about what you're doing, and what do you look forward to in the next 5 years in you guys' business?
Well, there's a disconnect. There's a disconnect between the headlines, a lot of the media articles, and the reality. And if you go to a CBL property, and most of our peer owners of the dominant malls in their markets, you go over the holidays, you go on the weekends, you go in the evenings, and they're packed. They're full. They've got a lot of people there for various reasons: shopping, eating, community. But the business is still thriving, and the vast majority of transactions are carried out in stores. So if you read the narrative in the media, you would never guess that. But going to the properties, that excites me, that energizes me. And then seeing the innovation, seeing the types of new uses that we're opening, a lot more local concepts, a lot of regional concepts, a lot of entrepreneurs, people who start digitally. They might start on on a site like Etsy, but they want to open a cart in the common area, and then they transition to a store on a short-term basis, and eventually they stay long-term. And then seeing what we're doing to these department stores and replacing them with dynamic food, entertainment, mixed-use projects. So there's so much innovation that it's a great business to be a part of, and I feel very fortunate.
Well, I feel fortunate also that you took time out of your day to come and just share your knowledge of the business with us. Stephen, tell people how they can connect with you or CBL if they want to just follow what you guys are doing and keep in touch with you guys as a company. Where should they go to keep in touch?
Well, CBLproperties.com is our website. And the malls, if you just Google any of the mall names, then you can find that.
You can follow CBL Malls on Twitter.
Yeah, follow CBL Malls on Twitter, and then a lot of the local malls have Facebook or Instagram as well. So there's lots of different ways to stay in touch with the company. So
Wonderful.
we appreciate your time and including us very much.
Once again, this is Adam Williams with Retail Redeveloped. Stephen, thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, bye.